so just stick around with us as others continue to join the webinar. But panelists, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Nick.
New Year, Nick.
How's everyone doing?
New year, new me.
Really?
I wish.
Just kidding.
Yeah. If only.
I do feel different in the
Happy
new year. I feel like more motivated when the January 1st comes.
I feel like I'm a little taller, or maybe it's just because of all the sleep I'm getting.
I wish. All right, Mark.
That's like my dream. Just a little bit more, you know?
Just enough.
Isn't it weird that on Zoom you don't know how tall people are when you
I
meet them?
know.
Good.
That is
Good.
weird.
That's
Yeah, I
good.
could be having professors that are like 6 feet tall and just wouldn't even know it.
My sorority ranked people based on their height energy because there are people we haven't met. So like short person energy versus tall person energy, and we just it's fun over Zoom.
I've had people I've met over Zoom tell me I'm way shorter than they expected.
Oh, me too.
I don't
Me
know.
too, 'cause I'm only like 5 feet tall, and everyone goes, "There's no way you're only 5 feet tall."
That's a compliment, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Short
I'll
team.
take it as a compliment.
Right, well, I think our numbers are starting to plateau, so we'll go ahead and get started. But first things first, we want to welcome each of you to the Study Abroad for Engineers live chat, brought to you by us, by real-life engineering students who were in your shoes not too long ago. Before we move on, I do want to thank all of the panelists for agreeing to participate today, since we are on winter break and getting ready for the spring semester. But on our next slide, shown right here, is our agenda for the next hour. We'll be kicking it off by introducing our panelists for the evening, whom are current engineering students. Then we'll be answering questions that you all submit on the webinar Q&A feature, though I will ask that you hold off submitting your questions for right now until we get to that Q&A portion. It's probably obvious given the title, but today our focus will be on examining the study abroad experience in viterbi, so questions related to this topic are encouraged but aren't necessarily limited to this. If you're viewing the live chat from our YouTube or viewing the live chat recording at a later date, don't worry, you can still email us questions at vstudent@usc.edu. We may not get to emailed questions during this session, but one of us will follow up with a response and hold off again submitting questions through the Q&A. And then just as a reminder, we are students. We are here to share the student perspective of viterbi and cannot answer the majority of admission-related questions. So if you have any of those, please direct them to our admission staff at viterbi.admission@usc.edu. And at the end of the session, we'll spend a few minutes going over how to get in touch with the viterbi admission office or how to stay in touch with us, as well as share some resources for students interested in studying abroad in their undergraduate career. But to get things started, I'll go off and kick off introductions with myself. My name is Nick, and I'll be your host for the night. I'm a junior studying mechanical engineering with a minor in disruptive innovation, and I'm from Alamo, California, up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I studied abroad in Paris, France, and I was set to go abroad a second time in Asia this past summer, but unfortunately that was canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But as for our panelists, let's kick things off with Sheetal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheetal. I use pronouns she, her. I'm a senior. I study chemical engineering with a minor in political science, and I'm originally from Guangzhou, China. I interned abroad the summer after my sophomore year in Shanghai, China, through the USC Global Fellows Program.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mark. I am a junior studying mechanical engineering with a minor in sports business and management, and I'm from Diamond Bar, California. I also just recently declared for PDP, which is progressive degree program. So I'm getting my master's in product development engineering. And I went abroad in the summer of 2019 with Nick, and we went to Paris.
Hi, everyone. My name's Miranda, pronouns she, her, hers. I am a senior also studying chemical engineering, originally from Denver, Colorado. I studied abroad the spring of my sophomore year in Brisbane, Australia at the University of Queensland.
Hi, everyone. I'm Domini. I'm a senior studying biomedical engineering with a minor in classical perspectives from Kahului, Hawaii. I studied abroad in Paris with Nick and Mark the summer after my sophomore year.
And finally, these are our moderators who will be behind the scenes responding to questions submitted during the Q&A that don't get answered live by our panelists here.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a junior from Palos Verdes, California, and I'm majoring in industrial and systems engineering. I was set to go abroad to London this past summer, but unfortunately it was canceled due to COVID-19.
Hi everyone, I'm Christina. I am a senior studying environmental engineering from the Los Angeles area. I was also set to go abroad last summer through the Tsinghua undergraduate research program to do research in Beijing, China.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Emily. I am from Denver, Colorado, and I'm a junior studying biomedical engineering. I was also supposed to go abroad with Alex in London this summer, but couldn't because of COVID.
All right, well, now it's time to submit your questions. If you're on the webinar, we encourage you to submit questions now through the Q&A feature below. And if you're viewing this from YouTube, you can email us your questions at vstudent@usc.edu for answers at a later date. Additionally, I do want to acknowledge that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, study abroad opportunities, some of them were canceled, and opportunities for the future have been put on hold for the time being. However, we hope that the situation will clear up soon and that you all will be able to study abroad in the future. We want you all to know that a few years ago, we were in the exact same position you're in now, applying to colleges and trying to decide which college would be the best fit for us and offer the kinds of opportunities that would be beneficial. And that's why we're here. We want to answer your questions and speak about our honest experiences. We want to share our stories that had such a big part in shaping our time inside and outside of the classroom. And of course, we also want to answer anything else that you're maybe interested in learning about. So to start off the question, I want everyone to answer this, but when did you decide that you wanted to study abroad? And we can go in any random order.
I can go first. I definitely knew that I wanted to study abroad before I even came to college. It was something that I was looking for when I was, visiting colleges and researching colleges to apply to. It was important that they had, established study abroad programs. But I mean, the reason was mostly because I love to travel, and I thought that living in another country and studying with friends was just an exciting thing. And especially I'm from Hawaii, so I wanted to specifically study abroad in Europe, which is like far. And so viterbi had a program that was definitely right for me.
Yeah, kind of as a counter to that, I never planned on studying abroad while at college. I'm an international student here in LA. And so for me, college as a whole has felt a little bit like studying abroad. So it definitely wasn't something I planned on doing. But during my sophomore year, I applied to a bunch of different internships. One of them was through a USC abroad program called Global Fellows. And that was the one that I ended up finding to be the most interesting offer out there. And so I kind of went abroad by accident, really.
I would say for me, like I've always kind of wanted to study abroad. I know my mom, even before I got to college, she said her one regret was not studying abroad. And since I love traveling so much, I thought like I have to do it. So even when I was looking like which college to decide, I made sure they had a study abroad office or just availability to study abroad as an engineer.
Yeah, I think similar to Dominique and Mark, I've known I wanted to go abroad probably since I was a junior in high school. I was definitely that high school student that was thinking, I'm going to go to a college out of state. I want to see something new. And I think the same thing extends to abroad and just wanting to study and do that university experience in a completely new place. But that being said, you could definitely decide you want to go abroad once you get to college as well. So at any point, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I would definitely echo the wanting to study abroad from a young age. My brother was part of a business program also at USC that's traveled around a lot. So for me, it was kind of not necessarily, trying to one-up my brother and study abroad as well, but it was definitely a non-negotiable for me. So I was glad that I was able to do so at USC. Our next question is, what exactly can you do when you study abroad for engineering, and how is studying abroad compared to just studying at USC?
That's a good question. I'll start us off. I didn't take any classes while I was abroad. I completed an internship at an environmental startup in Shanghai. So first of all, that was the big difference for me. Obviously, I was working a 9 to 5 instead of taking classes. So that was definitely one of the most radical shifts. In terms of how I think my experience living in a different city made it different to USC. First of all, I was living with 2 other USC students, but all the other people I interacted with were people from different universities, different backgrounds. So having that diversity of interaction, I think, was something that I really appreciated. being able to work with coworkers who ranged in age and who came from different places, that was definitely really helpful as well. And I think being dropped into a new city where you don't know anyone except, two of your roommates, that was for me kind of what really set it apart, because it felt like doing college all over again, but in an entirely new setting. And for a lot of people going abroad, for me it was a little bit different because I grew up in China, but I know for a couple of my roommates it was a different adjustment in terms of in the language barrier, and so that was like a good fun challenge as well.
Yeah, I guess my experience studying abroad during this semester as a student was being a student studying engineering just somewhere else. So I was taking pretty normal classes, but I also took some fun stuff too. Like I took a physics class that I would have had to take at USC anyway, but I also took marine biology because I was in Australia. So it's like you're studying abroad and you're still a student, but I would honestly say there's less studying involved in my experience when you're abroad, just because you're there to kind of build connections and gain perspective and kind of explore and get to know a new place more intimately. So that was my experience, at least.
Yeah, so I went during the summer, and I would say it's just different. It's a different atmosphere because you're not taking as many classes during the summer period rather than the normal school year. And so we only took 2 classes, Dominique and Nick and I. And so we had a lot more time on our hands. So like whenever you wanted to go study, you could go to a coffee shop or you could go explore the city during like your downtime. And you only really had class until like 1 o'clock during the school time or during the day. And so you had the entire afternoon to go explore, which is what I really loved.
Yeah, and then I would just add to that. So Mark, Nick, and I, the summer program that we were part of, we actually took engineering classes with engineering professors from viterbi, which is pretty unique. So we were not part of a university in Paris. We were sort of in this unique situation where we were in this, we had 40 engineering students and then the faculty. So we all got really close and, we had this comfort level where we could go places and we would have friends to go places with. But at the same time, we all lived in different apartments across the city. So, I lived in a different area than Mark and Nick. And so we lived with Parisians, in apartment buildings. And so we went to the, bakeries, and we were definitely immersed in Paris and with the local people. So that was definitely a valuable cultural experience.
Yeah, and just a kind of a follow-up question that's actually popped up a couple of times about the Paris program. People were wondering if all of our classes were conducted in English or in French. They were in English, like Dominique said, they were with USC professors. But at the same time, we did have to learn a little bit of crash course French because we were kind of scattered all around the city, not in dorms. So, ordering breakfast in the morning, going to the grocery store, like I took Spanish for 6 years, so I definitely had to learn at least a little bit of French just to pass by pretty quickly. Another question coming in from Fiona Shi is, can you describe what steps USC took to ensure your safety during studying abroad? And then also, is studying abroad any more expensive than a semester on campus?
I think there's 2 really good questions there. I know that when I went abroad through USC, they kind of have this like health insurance package that translates from the USC Health Center to abroad. And then if you have independent insurance, you can also kind of go through them to see if they have optional abroad packages. So there's an option through the school that they'll set you up with just as a baseline, but then there's international abroad packages as well. So like if you're going for a month, you could pay like $100 for like an accident or worst case scenario. And then there's other stuff. If you're going to like a different country, you can pay like $20 for a week for all encompassing health insurance. So there's definitely safety options, and I would say it is safe. I don't think many people get hurt, but there's things to keep you protected in the event of a worst case scenario or an emergency while you're overseas.
I would say also kind of this ensuring safety. USC closely monitors all kind of outside activity. And so I remember we had a meeting with one of our directors for the program, and about 2 months beforehand, that was when there were a lot of riots in Paris. And so he said, we're monitoring up until like when we leave. And if it's not safe, they'll pull the program. Fortunately, it was pretty safe when we were there. There were some riots and some protests when we were there as well. But as long as you kind of kept your distance, I would say it was very safe overall.
Yeah, those are both great questions. And I first of all, I want to echo what Miranda said about really comprehensive travel and health insurance that USC provides. I think that was something that really left me very much at ease. In terms of whether it's more expensive than studying at USC, that does depend on program to program. While generally study abroad programs do cost extra money, sometimes that's the same tuition rate as USC, but you have to pay additional, flight fares and accommodation fares. It really does depend. So the program I participated in, USC Global Fellows, because it was an internship program, I actually didn't end up having to pay anything out of pocket. The program covered my accommodation, my flights, my health insurance, and I also received a living stipend. So I didn't have to pay anything for the program, but that definitely is something that differs depending on where you're going and what you're doing. So yeah.
Yeah.
I would also say go for it.
No, I was just going to talk about our program, Mark, and how I'm pretty sure that the tuition was the same. And if you had scholarship, that carried over. So that was nice. And also the great thing is when you're a student, you get a lot of perks as far as like metro passes and passes to museums, a lot of things you can get into for free. So that was really helpful with cost. But I do think because you're in a foreign abroad and you are trying to do as much as you can, that can get expensive because you are probably doing more than you would do in LA. So yeah, that is something to consider when you're studying abroad.
I would say I do know a lot of programs. I know a lot in Australia because the one I was looking to go on, it was actually a lot cheaper than USC tuition. So it really depends the program.
Yeah, and then I forgot to say too, for like even the Australia program or other overseas programs, scholarships can sometimes transfer, but financial aid does as well for the USC's Overseas Studies Office. So things to keep in mind for sure.
All right, yeah, thank you all for answering those two questions. Our next one is, how did studying abroad change your perspective about attending USC?
That's a really fun question, actually. I like that a lot. I think for me, it just kind of opened my eyes up to how USC provides opportunities that I didn't think would ever really pop up. I never thought about studying abroad before I got to college, and I never thought about how, university funded programs could actually be really, really beneficial to my career development. And I kind of figured that it was like USC is here to give me classes and that's about it, right? Everything else I have to figure out on my own. And I think going abroad through a USC program that really funded all of my activities that summer, as well as, left me with a really positive experience, just reiterated how much more there is to the USC experience than just classes. And I think since that experience was so positive, I've just made a bigger effort since I've been here to take advantage of more of those types of programs, doing funded research on campus, because that's not something that, necessarily is available at a lot of universities. So I think for me, it changed my perception of the scope of funding really that's available to take advantage of at USC.
I would say for me, it kind of made me realize that I need to get out more and see the world. I didn't really leave for college. I'm from Diamond Bar, which is about 30 minutes from USC's campus. And USC campus as a whole is kind of like a bubble. Like you don't really need to leave. And so a lot of the times I catch myself not leaving for, 2-3 weeks on end, because you have everything that you could need there. But, going abroad, taking the metro to and from school, going on weekend trips or just, going to a random coffee shop in the city, I realized like I don't do that when I'm at school, and I need to start doing that more because there's so much more to see.
I think for me, it made me realize how important the people are at the university that you end up going to. And I know people say this all the time, but I think it was magnified by the fact that there are 40 of us that were in Paris, and we were sort of in a situation where we were all we had. So we had to just stick together and navigate the city together. And it just made me realize, like, wow, I'm so happy that I went with all of these amazing people who I really got along with, who were collaborative, who were really willing to explore and have fun, but also, make sure we did our classes and were productive. And so it just made me realize that, the people that you decide, or the people at the college, makes a whole lot of difference. And I think that my study abroad experience would not have been the same if I did not go with the people that I went with.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that's been said. And then something else that actually changed my perspective about USC is that I didn't realize how big of a footprint or global footprint USC had. So when I told people I was on exchange from USC and they knew what school I went to, I was completely shocked. And then I became friends with this Australian girl, and she was like, I want to study abroad at USC, like after you studied abroad here. So I think when I came back to SC, I had this new perspective that I go to university in a really amazing place that people want to go abroad to. And I should treat kind of every day as this new experience to see something new in Los Angeles or on my campus, and bring that same curiosity and adventurous from abroad back to SC, because there's so much, whether it's the people or the city, and you don't want to miss out on any of that.
Yeah, thank you all. Our next question is, I think, mainly towards Miranda for this portion of it, but if anyone else has anything to chime in as well, feel free to. But are there any anxieties about potentially losing a semester or year at USC, and what were the pros and cons you had to weigh before making that decision?
Definitely the FOMO. It was so real, and I was so scared. And I thought for a long time, Los Angeles is amazing, USC is amazing. I don't know how I could possibly have more fun anywhere else. But I had heard similar things to what Mark said, is like, if you don't go abroad, you're going to regret it. And people who haven't gone abroad say they regret it. And then everyone who's gone abroad, even if they were hesitant, were like, no, I don't regret it. In fact, I want to do it again. I would have done it for longer. I would have gone to this place or that place. So there is anxiety there, and that's completely normal, especially when your school is so awesome and you love it so much. But the pros and cons that you have to weigh are like, what are you looking for out of your college experience? And for me, it came down to, I have 8 semesters at SC. To do 1 out of 8 at this amazing location abroad is going to be really valuable to my undergraduate experience. So it's all going to be about what you want to get out of those 4 years.
Yeah, I would say a lot of students actually, like, they more often than not choose like the spring rather than the fall because they don't want to miss like a football season or something. And even when I was planning to go to Australia pre-COVID, I was like, oh, I can't miss a football season. I can't do this. I can't do that. But once I like went abroad to Paris, I realized like a lot of the stuff that I thought mattered to me really didn't matter. And that like going abroad in itself was a much better opportunity than like what I was valuing. And so it kind of made me like switch up my whole thought process.
Yeah, and I think it's totally valid if you decide that going abroad during a semester is too detracting from your college experience to opt for something a little shorter. A lot of people, study abroad during the summer for that exact reason. And there's other shorter opportunities available. Like you can go on alternative breaks, which are 1 to 2 weeks long. You can opt to do a Maymester, which happens during the month of May. So it's about a month long or shorter in some cases. And those things can sometimes be a really eye-opening experience without necessarily having to, take up the whole semester.
Yeah, from my perspective, I am biomedical engineering, but I'm also pre-med, which tacks on a lot of, different courses, not only that, but the MCAT and a bunch of things. And so for me, it was like, okay, I really realistically can't study abroad for a whole semester with my coursework. And so I guess the important thing here is if you are in that situation, it's just important to have those options. And I think Viterbi and USC, there's Viterbi study abroad, but there's also, USC, Dornsife study abroad. There's all these other options. that's the important thing. You have options if you run into that dilemma.
Yeah, definitely, echo all of that. I think we'd all agree that it's worth it in the end, even if you're hesitant about it. The next question that I think is pretty fun is, what are some things you would recommend people consider when they're picking a location to study abroad? And if we want to take that in a shorter way, like, why did you pick where you studied?
I'd say go anywhere. Literally wherever you can go, whatever classes you can fit in your schedule, just go. You're gonna have an amazing experience anywhere. And I just went where I could take things that helped me get degree progress. And like Mark said, it was a little cheaper than SC too. So make it work and you can't go wrong, really.
I definitely want to second the thought that you should go into it with an open mind, even if it's not like your dream location, because I definitely was not excited about studying abroad in Shanghai, despite everyone telling me it was a really cool city and that I hadn't been to before, because I grew up in Guangzhou, which is like a 2-hour flight away, same country. I was like, how different could it be? So I was definitely a little bummed about having like an abroad experience that wouldn't necessarily be very abroad, but I went into it and I was very gladly disproved and had a wonderful time and found that it was an entirely different city. So even if you're not quite sure if where you're going is, the dream country you've always wanted to go to, definitely be open to the experience, because chances are you'll enjoy it regardless.
I would say for me, I went to Paris just because of convenience. Like I saw the opportunity, I just took it. But the second time around, when I was trying to decide like where to go for a semester, you really take into account a lot more things like the weather. A lot of my friends were going to Edinburgh, and I was like, it's going to be cold in the fall. I don't like snow, like this and that. So I was like, I'm trying to go to Australia. I think the weather was one of the main things that I considered. Yeah.
I mean, I think personally for myself, when that application came out for the program that Dominique, Mark, and I went on, I didn't really think a lot about it. I just kind of said, oh, it's Paris, and I'll apply on a whim. And I remember going years prior on like a family vacation to Paris for a couple of days and thought, people make such a big hype about it, and I just didn't understand it. And also thought, oh, I took Spanish for 6 years. Am I wasting all my Spanish training by going to a French-speaking country? And quickly I realized that was the wrong approach to it, and I actually really liked that I was proven so wrong about Paris and proven so wrong about France, and also that it kind of is a little bit fun to be put on your toes and be in a place where you're learning so much about it, especially the language. So my one recommendation is, if you're worried about a language barrier, don't be. A, people will speak English and they'll be friendly, and B, like, you learn a lot more of the necessary small like get by phrases a lot faster than you think you would. All right, the next question we're going to answer is, what was the hardest adjustment you had to make? Christine, this must have been a really good question. They all seem pretty stumped.
This is a good question. I think one thing that I found difficult to adjust to, for me, the language barrier wasn't really a problem. I can see like how that would be a big one for people. But I just think when you're at a place like USC for an extended period of time, you get very used to navigating around the city and around the general USC area. And I think being dropped into a new city with no kind of understanding of where things are, what areas are good to go to for certain thing, what areas are safe, what areas are more expensive. I think that was definitely kind of a bit of an adjustment, being dropped in as a non-local. But again, that's really just something that, it feels a little daunting to begin with. Like, I get on and there's 13 metro lines and I'm like, I don't know which one I'm supposed to take to get to work. But it's one of those things that you inevitably fall into a pattern of recognizing. And it's kind of, I think, very rewarding to look back at the end of your experience and realize that you kind of somehow feel like a local in a city that you have only been in for a couple months. I remember at the end of my experience in Shanghai, just kind of getting on the metro and almost muscle memorying my way to a department store and being like, wow, I didn't even think about where I was going. I just knew exactly where everything was. And, I'm more familiar with metro stations in Shanghai than I am in the city I grew up in. And I think that kind of radical immersion is something that doesn't initially seem like something that's going to happen, but it does happen way faster than you realize.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. You go from such a comfortable lifestyle that you've known for a while and you're just thrown to a brand new city, and you don't really comprehend like how much of a change that is before you're there. I know for the longest time I was trying to look for like a certain brand of lotion. I don't know if you remember that, Domini, but they just didn't have it out there. Or I remember like I was like so comfortable where I was at USC. I knew the area. I grew up in this area, but being in a new kind of space, you don't know where the good and bad parts of the city are. I remember we were going out one night and we were walking, we're like, oh, like, what's going on over there? And there was like a whole protest and police had riot gear. And it was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be over there. But it's the little things that you pick up on like slowly. And I would just say like, make sure you're always on your toes because you don't know like what's happening just because you're coming from such a comfortable lifestyle.
Yeah, I remember that you have to like consciously think about how not to stick out as a tourist or not to stick out as an American. I remember the first few weeks we had to, we watched, the locals, and we watched how they dressed, how they walked, how they boarded the metro, how they greeted each other, acted at restaurants, at bakeries, and it definitely took an adjustment. It took some period of time where we had to watch and we had to make sure we weren't too loud, talking English too loud, learning certain greetings and things in the French language. So I would say like it's not like you just are immersed and you're like, oh yeah, I can do this, I can pick it up. It takes a conscious effort to learn how to be respectful of the culture and learn how to try to sort of like assimilate. So that was hard, I would say. And it wasn't like we were, the French people weren't like being rude to us because we were like that. I think it was just us making sure that we were being respectful. So
I totally remember that too, because when you're first there in whatever country you're in, people can tell you're not from there. And so when they're greeting you, if they know English, they speak English because they know that most of the time, or more often than not, you don't know the language. But, near the tail end of the program or, whatever you're on, we were being greeted in French. And so like, it's the little things that you pick up on, just the mannerisms to where people can't really tell anymore.
Yeah, I would definitely say that one of the most like exciting parts of the program was I was going on a walk one day, just kind of in like a more touristy area of Paris. And this was probably 4 or 5 weeks in. So a decent amount of time where we've kind of gotten the lay of the land, we're a little bit more comfortable. Having a touristy family come up with Google Translate in hand was like the most, oh my gosh, like I'm blending in moment ever. I felt so accomplished. So it's definitely interesting because you're like, we don't stand out that much. And then once you start to kind of get in the rhythm of everything and get more like culturally associated with your city, you start to say like, oh yeah, we were those people standing out. So I definitely echo that. But for me, the one thing I'd say is the hardest adjustment to make is as somebody who likes pushing my comfort zones and always wanted to go abroad, the hardest part was coming back and having this whole exciting pace of life all of a sudden just come to a grinding halt and go back to what you were used to prior, just because it kind of makes things for a little bit seem more boring because you're trying to make the comparison for the initial part after, instead of just appreciating what it was and taking the experiences from that and moving it forward. You try to live in the past a little bit. So once I got over that hurdle, I would say that was the hardest adjustment, was kind of coming back. But then after that, you completely appreciate the whole experience.
Yeah, I go that one, definitely.
I don't know if you guys dealt with this, but a random one is units. Like, okay, in engineering classes, we use SI. I'm used to that in class, but I'm driving and I'm like, what the heck is a kilometer? Like, how long is it going to take me to drive 10 kilometers? Or like kcals or weird things like that. So because I wasn't dealing with a large scale cultural assimilation, it was definitely just those small things that I was like, what the heck? My Oreo McFlurry is 1,800 kilocalories. Like, I don't know what that means.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even really think about that. Yeah, it's weird. You get used to it for sure.
I don't
The
think
next-
that's what I was looking at when I was abroad, but I was not counting my calories.
I don't know. So they have like a weird rule where they have to have like all the calories on their menus. So it's like right there in my face. And if your daily caloric intake here is 2,000 calories and it says that my Oreo McFlurry is 1,500 right in front of me, I'm confused. It's
I've seen it before, picking up like a can of cherry Coke and it was in kilojoules, and I was like, no, wait a second. Like, I know this from class, but I've never seen it for food. It's a little weird. All right, our next question is about how much preparation is necessary or to be expected before studying abroad.
That's a good question. I think it depends a little bit on what your abroad program is. So obviously, like, you guys can speak a little bit better to what it's like when you're taking classes. But I know for me, since it was a work program, like it was an internship program, you want to go in with like the same amount of preparation you would do with an internship here in the States. Like, definitely, learning about the company, learning about the work you're going to do, just being well situated in a professional capacity. That doesn't change when you're interning abroad. If anything, there's more research to do because you have to situate yourself in like a professional, learn more about the industry in the different countries. So there's almost more research to be done. And in terms of, I think, preparation for the program and being abroad as a whole, I think it's always helpful to have kind of a list of things you want to get done before you go there. Because once you get to a new city, it can all be a little bit overwhelming. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in, USC is a bubble, but sometimes when you enter a new city, you can make that city your own bubble too, inadvertently. And so I think it's always helpful if you have kind of overarching goals going in, like, I wanna explore this part of the city, or I wanna leave the city and explore these places. And having that list before you go in, I think, is very important, because it means you're less likely to kind of forget about the reasons why you wanted to go abroad in the first place, I think.
I would say, like, besides the, looking at the currency exchange and what if you get sick, what you do, and those things. I remember before I went, I read a little bit about what was going on in Paris, especially, I think Mark mentioned this, I think they called it like the yellow jackets, they had protests. So I read a little bit about, why they're protesting, what was going on, and then the Notre Dame, a year or less than a year prior, like, burned down, or the roof and the spire burned down. So just knowing a little bit about the political and landscape and the current events was important. So yeah.
I would also say, think about the things that you wouldn't think about. And so when I was going abroad, I didn't even think about any extra fees on like credit cards or stuff. So make sure you have a viable source to get money, because I was literally going to the bank probably once every other day to pick up cash, because there was like 3 banks in all of Paris that I could get cash from without an extra fee. And like, it adds up when you're spending, months on end wherever you are. Or just like, what kind of makes you feel comfortable, like, when you're here. And so I didn't bring too many clothes just because I wanted to pack light. But there was a lot of things that I forgot to bring. So just, yeah.
Make a packing list. Packing lists are super helpful because that also means you won't forget anything, because you can like check it at the end. I mean, you'll make sure you won't buy too much, because if it's radically different, you're like, oh.
I think the prep is definitely front loaded to before you leave. And then hopefully once you get there, if your prep was good, it's smooth sailing. The biggest thing that helps to prep is just speaking to someone, hopefully, that you can connect with at your school, or maybe who graduated a few years before you who did a similar program. And they're going to tell you, like, bring that lotion, or get a card that's going to work in Australia. And it's weird because you need to find like a place to live, and you need to know what you're getting into. So it feels like a lot of the work happens before you go, but then when you get there, it should be ideally easygoing.
Yeah, echo all of that. Make lists, know where you're going at the very least. I know I did pretty light preparation, but I made sure to make a list of all the necessities to hit. And so even though I didn't know, a ton about where I was going to be living or what Parisian culture was like or how to get around other than the metro, stuff like that, it worked itself out. So as long as you have the basics, like they were saying, packing lists, having a point of contact, and of course, figuring out how to withdraw money or what credit cards to use, that's the definitely the most important stuff. All right, our next question is from Aiden, and they asked, I visited colleges that sort of discourage studying abroad if you're an engineering student because it might extend the length of your undergraduate years. Has studying abroad caused you to have to spend an extra semester or year at USC?
I mean, it definitely is a valid concern. And like I was saying, it's important to have options because I think, I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure if I did a semester, I'd have to try to really crunch things into my time at USC. But the great thing is we have advisors. So, my advisor is specifically for biomedical engineering majors. And so before, like even a couple semesters before I even decided to or went to study abroad, he had already worked out, like in the event that I did study abroad that summer, like how that would help free up my schedule and how that would all work. And he made sure that I would graduate in 4 years. So I think the key is working with your advisors, and they have your best interests in mind. So they will make sure that if you don't intend to study more than 4 years, you don't.
I can just echo on my own experience from that as well. Doing that study abroad program in the summer meant I took 2 classes over the summer. And then when everything fell through over COVID, I decided to take 2 more classes through USC over the summer as well. And that ended up getting me a semester ahead to the point where I was able to take that progressive degree program, the program Mark is a part of as well. And in the major I'm ending up with 2 masters after 5 years. So it's something I never thought was going to be possible, but it ended up making like a huge amount of room in my schedule for something, that I didn't even know was a possibility. And now I'm so grateful that I did that completely. That wasn't even part of why I applied to the program. It ended up, getting me ahead instead. All right, the next question, I think this is a pretty fun one. Somebody asked, I really like making travel videos. So do you think I would have enough time to make a travel video as I'm studying abroad? So I think this question can also spiral to like, what other places did you visit when you were abroad?
I think that's a great idea. I feel like documenting your abroad experience definitely is something that, it makes it very fun to look back on and something you have a lot of time to do. My program actually required us to like journal weekly. And my our program advisor, Lauren, she was big on using artistic expression. So she was like, if you don't want to write a journal entry, that's fine. Film a video of yourself telling me what you did this week. And so I think definitely, you have the time and use whatever means necessary to kind of keep track of your experiences. It's great. Scrapbook. I made a scrapbook. I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, I ended up making like a 30-minute video, just taking random clips out of like everyday kind of just travel. And we went a lot of places. I know I went to Berlin with Domini, a couple other places as well, to Italy, to England. And it's actually not that hard to make like videos. Like it's a couple minutes out of each and every day, and you kind of clip it together at the end. And it just kind of makes you think about all you did. And so I don't know what level you're at in making videos, but mine was very amateur and just kind of recapping what I did.
You can download one of those apps that makes you film a second every day. And then at the end, you have like a 30-second video of everything. It's kind of fun. Or like, I guess 2 minutes, depending on how long you go.
Yeah. And honestly, you take so many photos when you're abroad, you take so many Snapchat videos and all of that. Like it's a great way to kind of decompress the entire trip afterwards, be able to, pictures say 1,000 words, be able to tell so many more stories than you would to any friends who are asking about the program. Because for a while, all you want to talk about is going abroad. And some people start to get sick of hearing about it. So, video is definitely the best way to capture your experience as best as possible. But since it is 7:45 and we have a little bit of info to go afterwards, I thought we'd end with the classic question. We'll go in any random order, but everybody should answer this is why did you pick USC? And also, like, what do you love about USC? Why stay at USC?
All right, I can go first. Probably answered this question 100 times by now since I'm a senior. But why I decided to go to USC, a big reason was I really liked the math and sciences, and I knew I wanted to do engineering. So a really, great engineering program was top of my, list of priorities. But then I also really love to read and write, and I really like the humanities, and that's something that I didn't want to compromise on. So basically, I chose a school that I could get both. I could get a great engineering program and supplement that with the humanities and liberal arts education. So that's why I chose USC, why I love USC and why I stay at USC. There's a lot of things, but I think now being a senior, I will say like the opportunities that I've had has just been more than I ever would have expected. Whether that be, I do undergraduate research I've done for the past 4 years, and the opportunities I've gotten within that experience, within my study abroad experiences, within my internship experience that I got through, USC, all of these opportunities that came up and really helped me to grow and develop into a person that hopefully will be, whatever I decide to do, a doctor, I guess. That's what I'm pursuing. Hopefully will make me a good doctor. I think USC has just really helped me develop and put me on that right path.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've been reflecting a lot on recently as well as a senior entering our last semester, which is crazy. But I think the reason I first decided to come to USC was, for me, college was a really big step towards stepping out of my comfort zone. I moved like halfway across the world for school. And so it was important to me to find, I think, college in a location that, even though it was out of my comfort zone, had certain elements that I would be comfortable with. So, I grew up in a city. I wanted to go to school somewhere that was very accessible to a city. College town wasn't something that really stood out to me as an opportunity I was interested in. And Los Angeles is diverse and vibrant and has a great food scene and great weather. And, I thought, I'm sacrificing a lot and kind of just, going to be dealing with so many new things, moving to a new country and a new continent, that I wanted to be in a place where I could be surrounded by people who looked like me, and places where I could get food that I was used to getting. And, all of those things, I think, were comforts that I was looking to find while at USC. The reason that I stayed, it's somewhat similar. It's because I realized that the diversity of the city was something that extended to the opportunities that I had at USC. I feel like I've had a really, really varied range of opportunities, from, participating in student organizations that have absolutely nothing to do with engineering, to be able to conduct research both in and out of engineering. And, I worked in 3 different labs at my time at USC, to being able to intern in very uniquely Los Angeles opportunities, and to be able to kind of pursue a brand of engineering that I never thought was possible. I want to work in environmental policy post-graduation. And I feel like the reason why I was able to come to that conclusion is because Viterbi is very, for the most part, open to allowing its engineers to rebrand engineering in any way they see fit. So, I came to USC, I like to say I came to USC because I thought it would be diverse, and I stayed because I realized it was diverse in more ways than I anticipated.
Yeah, I can definitely, everything everyone said is true, 100%. So, but I think what Sheetal just said something about rebranding engineering. And when I think of answering the question, why USC, it's because as I was graduating high school, I knew I wanted to study engineering. I wanted to graduate in 4 years, but I wanted to go abroad, and maybe I wanted to try Greek life or join a new club and just try a million things that college has to offer. And sometimes with engineering, I felt a little cornered or put in a box. So why USC is I really was sold on that, do engineering plus all of those things that you're interested in. And then why I stayed at USC, I think something you maybe don't realize is that your school and the place you decide to go to for college is going to impact you in ways that you can't predict. And as I went through my years at USC, I was realizing that I really kind of liked the people who were around me, and that I was inspired by the environment and the culture and what people were doing. And then that in turn has led me to so many different things. So you don't know everything that you want to do yet or that you're going to fall in love with in college, wherever you may go. So why I stayed is that USC is a place that I've just loved growing at so much.
I also agree with what Miranda said. I didn't know what I wanted to do going into college. And I know for most schools, you don't start taking engineering courses until your third or fourth year, or second or third year. And USC, you start taking those courses like right away. And so for me, I didn't even know if I wanted to do engineering. I was like, I need somewhere that I can kind of like test it out before I choose like if that's what I'm gonna, pursue. But why I really stay at USC is because it's such a tight knit community, and there's kind of like an area for everybody. And so I know my freshman year roommate Noah, I love him to death, but we were actually very different, and we were able to find our own kind of places at USC. And so like there's not too many colleges out there where it's big enough where you don't know everybody, but you can like find your own little niche, your own little group. And I just love kind of like the connections that you get. I know I went skiing one time. I love the story, but I went skiing one time and I was wearing a USC shirt, and I got on the lift, and the guy that was sitting next to me, he's like, "Yo, you go to USC, man?" I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I went there like 20 years ago." And like, we talked all the way on the lift, we wrote it down, we got on the next lift again. And he was just telling me like, how great it was when he was there. And like, it's little things like that, where I feel like going to USC really kind of hits home.
Yeah, I definitely echo all of that. There's definitely community, and the Trojan family, whatever that means, being worldwide and you get to meet people from everywhere is like such an amazing thing. For myself, as to why I chose USC, it was the only school I applied to in California because I really, like Miranda was saying, she wanted to get out of state, see something new. And I knew I wanted to do engineering from a pretty young age. Over my shoulder, I mean, some people already caught it in the Q&A, but I have like a roller coaster wall. I've always loved roller coasters. Roller coaster design is what made me want to become a mechanical engineer. So that I was pretty set in. It really boiled down to the fact that I'd visited USC the most because my brother was there. So I'd really gotten to see the vibe of campus, and there was something buzzing and exciting about it. And there was also, of course, things like studying abroad and accelerated 5 years master's programs that were really big, exciting, shiny things that drew me in. But then once I got there, I realized how much more I could do just beyond those two opportunities that really stood out to me the most when applying. And it came to the point where, I became much more than just an engineer. And I'm so glad I did, because I realized I'm not just, an engineering student, and I didn't just want to be an engineering student. And I don't know if I would have discovered that anywhere else. I think USC has allowed me to grow in different areas, and has allowed me just to kind of figure out what I want to do both inside and outside of engineering. But that was our final question. We hope you enjoyed the live chat tonight and gained some insight on what it is to be an engineering student studying abroad or getting the chance to spend some time abroad. If you missed any of the chat, you can rewatch the whole thing on our YouTube channel a little bit later. I think we have our slides coming back up. Yep. We would love for you to stay connected, and a way to connect with the Viterbi admission office is through an information session. This is a great opportunity to learn more about the application process and also get to ask more general questions about Viterbi from some students like all of us here on the panel, as well as the moderators. If you're interested, you can register at viterbiadmission.usc.edu/visit. This is a good time to take a picture of your screen so you can have this information for later. Before moving on to the last part, we just want to remind you that the application to be considered for first year admission is just under 2 weeks away on Friday, January 15th. So just have that on your calendar if you've not already applied, or if you're in this application cycle, that the time is coming up just in what looks like about 12 days. We also want to take a moment to shout out some amazing resources for students. So on the top, if you want to read some more student experiences on our Viterbi student website, that is the link that takes you to all of the different blogs that some students have written about going abroad. Some Viterbi specific abroad programs can be found through that link on the left on the Viterbi admission. And the Office of Overseas Studies is USC's general abroad office that sends students on over 50 different programs to over 30 different countries. So that's where Miranda was able to find her study abroad opportunity for the semester. And I know I've had a lot of friends who have found their chance to go abroad as well through that as well. So if you want to look through that link on some maybe alternative ones, not just through the engineering school, those are some great resources as well. And coming up next, some more live chats. We want to go more in depth on all of your questions about being a Viterbi student. So please feel free to join us on a live chat on the 10th for all things Viterbi. So really just getting to learn more about being a Viterbi student in general. And then we also have a panel for any students who might be looking to transfer to USC, specifically into USC Viterbi. And lastly, stay connected with us Viterbi students. We would love for you to follow us on your social media accounts. So our podcast is released on Spotify as well as on Apple Music, I believe, as well. Then we also have our Viterbi student Instagram. That email I was plugging there is written out, vstudent@usc.edu. The Viterbi student YouTube is where this will be posted later, as well as our past live chats and many other videos. We have a Viterbi student Twitter, and new to this year, we also have a Viterbi student TikTok where we put out some fun content on what it's like to be an engineering student, but obviously with a little bit of a TikTok spin on it as well. Thank you again for tuning in tonight. Again, if you have any questions, please email us at vstudent.usc.edu, but good luck on your college applications. Stay safe, and as always, fight on.